Hey there comic book fans, I'm John Anderson. I just watched episode 4 and 5 of Legends of Tomorrow, and they were pretty good. Now, I went to see Deadpool last Thursday night, so I wasn't able to put up my afterthoughts video for episode 4, so I'm going to do episode 4 and 5 here tonight. Now, if you haven't seen either episode, keep in mind I'm going to be going through key plot points from the episodes, so here is your spoiler warning for both episodes, but I'm going to break it up into different time slots, so I'll leave timestamps in the description if you're a little behind as well, so that way you can watch episode 4 and 5 at different times. With that being said, let's get into episode 4. So episode 4 begins in 1986 in DC, and the team is trying to gather some information on Vandal Savage that just so happens to be in the Pentagon. So we get this great opening heist where everybody has their own specific task. Unfortunately, Hawkgirl kind of loses control and hulks out, and she kind of can't control the rage inside of her. So after the heist fails, Rip goes to Sarah and is like, hey, you struggle with these demons, maybe you can help Kendra work through this. And we see a couple scenes of them kind of like working it out, but it triggers bloodlust in Sarah again, and then she's kind of confused. How do I help Kendra when I can't control myself? And they both kind of work through it together. And it's something I really wanted to see develop with Sarah's bloodlust. It was a great concept, but it just wasn't executed very well. Then the team heads off to the Soviet Union because there's word that Savage is working on something and is kind of making this scientist kind of perfect some sort of nuclear weapon. Ray and Snark try to seduce this Russian scientist, and Ray, being the Boy Scout that he is, tries to be really nice and charming, and she's not buying into it, and Snark kind of takes over and is like, hey, I'm going to play the bad boy card. And of course she takes to Snark, not before he takes her wallet, being the true criminal that he is, but also obtains her access card to get into the facility where they're working on this weapon. And during this time, Rip's visited by one of his mentors, Zena Drew, and kind of gives him this ultimatum: we gotta stop meddling with time here, you should know better than this, and your team's coming with me, you can either come quietly or we'll have to kill you all. And obviously Rip's unsure about this, but he's got Heatwave and Firestorm to back him up when he kind of breaks that news to his old mentor. And in the crossfire, Firestorm gets injured and leads into this argument between Professor Stein and Jax, because Jax feels like he's always the one who has his body on the line and he doesn't feel the same risk that he does. You get this kind of argument from Stein telling him to grow up and to not be a child, and we're doing this for the greater good, trying to really hurt Jax. But later on he has a talk with Ray and he's like, listen, I don't want to do this, it's just I don't want to lose him like I lost Ronnie. I gotta give that credit to the actor, because I think that really hit home better, because I understood the difference between his kind of charade versus his actual feelings that he's struggling with. So it's discovered that what Savage is working on is he's trying to create a firestorm, because at the auction where the team last saw Savage in the 70s, he was kind of inspired to make this firestorm creation that he saw. And it turns out that this Russian scientist isn't so much a damsel in distress, she's actually very aware of what Savage is doing and on the same page as him, and leads to the team getting captured, which includes Ray, Mick, and Professor Stein, because he's the key to understanding the firestorm matrix. And Snark is very upset with Rip's leadership ability, because half the team gets captured in one fell swoop under direction of Rip, and leads into the next episode. So episode 5 is kind of like the conclusion or the end of this two-parter between episode 4 and 5. And we see that Rip's trying to figure out how to get the team back, and he assigns Snark and Sarah tasks. It kind of leaves Jax and Kendra behind, because if the Russians find out that Jax is part of Firestorm, they'll try to utilize him. And since Vandal Savage is running the place, he can't have Kendra there, because if she dies, then everything is mute at this point. So he's going to utilize Snark's ability to break out of prisons, and he kind of gives Sarah this ultimatum that, like, worst comes to worst, you have to kill Stein to protect the future. Because she's a former League of Assassins, he feels like this goal can be achieved by her. And you see that Ray and Mick are kind of like prison mates, and Ray's this really nice guy trying to be friends with everybody in prison and really polite, and Mick's just kind of rolling his eyes the whole time and like, hey, like, that's not how prison works. And it results in Ray getting beat by the alpha prisoner. And we have Stein also being interrogated to figure out how Firestorm works and to teach them how to create the Firestorm Matrix. And he's not really giving in. So Savage decides that he's going to use Mick and Ray as torture victims to kind of break Stein. And as they're getting beaten, Ray kind of takes the more offensive approach and he gets the bulk of the beating, so that way Mick doesn't have to. And it's at that point that Stein breaks and is like, I can't stand to watch my friends die. During this time where we have Snark and Sarah kind of infiltrating the prison, and Snark goes out of his way to save Mick because that's his partner, and we see some character development on Mick that we haven't seen in a while or nearly at all in this series yet. And he's like, listen, this guy took a beating for me, we have to save him also. And Snark's not okay with this, because it's one thing to have two guards leave, but have two guards leave with an injured guy on his back, like, it's really suspicious. But of course, Mick convinces him to bring him along, kind of as this, like, debt, because he took that beating for him. Now there's an opportunity for Sarah to kill Stein. Obviously she doesn't take that shot because she's trying to build her humanity, kind of building on what happened last episode. And they discover that Stein's the second half to Firestorm, that they need two people to create a Firestorm Matrix, and the female scientist decides that they're compatible, and Stein tries to explain that that's not how it works, but of course she doesn't listen. She just wants to be part of Firestorm, and they merge, and that causes her to combust. But at this point, Jax and Kendra aren't cool with staying on the sidelines and jump into the fight against Rip's kind of discretion. And when Jax enters the battle, he tries to reconnect with Stein, and Stein's trying to warn him to stay away because she's unstable, but because she's not in full control, and manages to get Stein to break free before she combusts. And the whole team kind of escapes, and it seems like the Legends team has won and everybody's drinking, having a good time. But we get a surprise attack from Kronos, who causes the Wave Runner to crash into 2046, where they land in Star City. It's kind of like been destroyed, and they run into the Green Arrow that they assume is Oliver. But when he moves into the light, it's discovered that that's not Oliver Queen, it's somebody else who's the Green Arrow. And that will lead us into next episode, which should be really cool. So that's my thoughts on episode 4 and 5. If you guys like this video, be sure to share and subscribe. Follow me on Facebook at John Ryan Anderson, or on Instagram at GodStageFright. And remember guys, as always, comics do deserve a second look.